Andy Mok joins me now from Beijing. He's a senior research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. Andy, great to see you again.
Great to be here, Elaine.
Well, it seems like there are so many tech and digital gatherings happening in China right now. Explain the significance of this AI conference, and where does China stand in the AI industry, leading what sectors?
Well, artificial intelligence is certainly something that has captured the imagination of people all around the world for at least decades. But I think what's important to recognize today, and I think what this conference, the World AI Conference, marks, is that we have largely left the age of discovery, where scientists are trying to figure out how to actually make AI work, and typically it's referred to as machine learning, to an age of implementation, meaning that a lot of the technical issues have been resolved, and what remains to be done is actually turn these insights, these research findings, into commercially viable products and services that companies can sell, people can use. Whether that's the metaverse, whether that's robotic surgery, or other kinds of AI-enabled medical diagnostics. So where we are then with China is that China, of course, really has unique strengths in implementation, but also the other important piece is data. And China has the most data in the world when it comes to key AI applications. Again, we look at healthcare just because of the population. Surgeons come from all around the world, including some of the top hospitals in the United States, to practice in China, because you see many more cases, you can learn much more quickly, and this is true in other spheres as well. So I think, Elaine, this is an exciting time for AI because we're really in this implementation phase, and China's strength, I think, really lies in implementation. Of course, R&D, it's been making incredible strides over the last few years, but implementation is really where it's at, and I think we're seeing some of this at the conference this year as well.
You mentioned healthcare. When some of us think of AI, robots and healthcare come to mind, but now we're hearing more and more about that one word you mentioned, metaverse. How does AI play a role in the metaverse, and how would that be used in our daily lives?
Well, I think here we also need to recognize that this conference takes place in Shanghai, and Shanghai is a key city in China and the world for these developments. And there's three areas that Shanghai has targeted: artificial intelligence chips or semiconductors, and I think what they call biomedicine. And how this works then when we think about the metaverse is these first two. So, of course, without chips, semiconductors, none of this would be possible. But we also need to know that you don't necessarily need the most advanced chips, but once you cross a certain processing threshold, exciting things can happen. And AI in the metaverse, I see sort of the most important applications, or what we can think of as NPCs, if people in the gaming world would be very familiar with this acronym, or non-player characters, meaning software programs essentially that populate the metaverse, that act like human beings, that give the human inhabitants of the metaverse interesting people or sentient, seemingly sentient beings to interact with. And the best way to understand this is there is a very popular American TV show called Westworld a few years ago, where people could essentially enter a simulation of living in the Wild West. And many of the characters they would encounter were actually robots, but you couldn't tell them apart from human beings.
Interesting stuff. Andy Mok, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.